So I didn't want to be a distributor. I wanted designers to connect directly to materials and to the farms and the land and the animals, and the people who are really doing the work to create the fiber.
This episode of Voices from the Field is part of our continuing Soil to Skin Climate Beneficial Fiber podcast series, in which NCAT carbon farm planners Allison Agee and Danielle Duni explore the relationships between soil health, fiber production, and market solutions. This work is funded through NCAT's Climate Beneficial Fiber Partnership with Colorado State University, Carbon Cycle Institute, Fibershed, Seed to Shirt, and New York Textile Lab. And today, Allison and Danielle are talking to Laura Sansone of the New York Textile Lab. Let's listen.
Hi, I'm Allison Agee.
And I'm Danielle Duni, and we are conservation agriculture planners in the Northern Great Plains.
In this episode, we speak with Laura Sansone from New York Textile Lab and her vision for climate beneficial fiber.
Well, we're here today with Laura Sansone on our second episode of Soil to Skin to elevate our climate beneficial partnership project. Our first episode was with Rebecca Burgess of Fibershed. And Laura, our understanding is that you are a Fibershed affiliate that works closely with their program. Do you mind just starting with that and telling us how you got where you are, what the New York Textile Lab is, and how you correlate with Fibershed?
Sure. So New York Textile Lab is a designing consulting company, and I work with designers who are interested in sourcing regional climate beneficial materials. So that's what New York Textile Lab does. I am a Fibershed affiliate, as you pointed out, and so I'm part of the New York Fibershed. There are other members as well. We're growing it. And I brought the carbon farming program here to New York with the help of Rebecca I would say about 6 years ago. Yeah. And we ran a pilot program, and now we're growing it thanks to the USDA funding. So I'm also the founder of the Carbon Farm Network, which is a purchasing cooperative. And this is how we bring fiber to market, the carbon farm fiber to market. So the Carbon Farm Network supports carbon farming in our region. I also teach part-time at Parsons School of Design, and I teach courses around sustainability and ethical textile production. So I guess I could tell you a little bit about sort of how I started on this, doing this work. I think you might want to learn about that. So just where I live and operate, I live in the Hudson Valley region, which is geographically it's defined by the Hudson River, which runs from the southern Adirondack Mountains north, south, and lets out. It runs 300 miles and lets out in New York Harbor. The Hudson River was traditionally like an economic artery. It was historically that. A lot of manufacturing happened along the banks of the Hudson River. Of course, that's all been outsourced, through the decades. That sad story about how we've outsourced all the manufacturing. So now it's home to many small family farms that grow specialty crops like vegetables, and we have a lot of apple growing here in the Hudson Valley. We have some grape growing, and of course we have fiber, which is where my intersection happens with the fiber growers. I moved up to the Hudson Valley from New York City in 2003, and I was living on a farm up there on the west side of the river. And I had a studio on the farm, and I was looking at harvesting natural dyes from the farm. So I was doing that and thickening dyes and painting on organic cotton and seeing if I could compost that. I was really interested in making things that could go back into the ground as a designer. This is of course called soil to soil production, which was coined by Fibershed. I was doing that, and my neighbor who was farming our property was carting his vegetables down to the city, and I teach up at Parsons down in the city. So he would cart his vegetables down, and I would actually see him on my way to work. Like I would take the train down, which it's a beautiful ride. It runs right along the Hudson River. And I would get into the city, and I would actually see him at the farmers market down there. So we have an extensive like farmers market network in New York called the Green Market System, and all the boroughs. So I would see him at the Union Square Green Market, which is in the neighborhood of the new school where I teach, Parsons. And I started thinking about the resources that travel from upstate New York down to the city, particularly our food and water. A lot of people don't think that, people forget in New York even that the Catskill and Hudson Valley region is the watershed that serves the 9 million people in New York City. So I started thinking about the health of the soils, and then also the economic importance that the local marketplace had to the growers in the larger state of New York. And also and thinking about like how the potential of the small marketplace could kind of illuminate interdependencies with systems. Like at that particular market, like you could harvest for dyes and make dyes and like compost. There's a composting station there. There's a used clothing station there. So I started to think about like this idea of systems interdependencies with these, kind of small market systems, and also considering like how you can have traceability and trust, like kind of generate that in a small market system, which is very different than our global systems. Like, you go to the farmer's market every week and you see the farmer, and they hand you like, the apples or the bunch of radishes, and you create a relationship with that person, and it creates trust. So I wanted that to happen with our clothing and textiles. And I think that's really what started my work around bioregional development with New York Textile Lab. Yeah, so I think that's like a little bit of a background into how my work started, really. And of course, I affiliated with Fibershed as well.
It really sounds like you're a blender of fashion, textiles, and sustainability, and you've taken the model that's been going on with vegetable production and shifted it to our textiles. And my understanding is it's mostly with wool and alpaca, and you have a cooperative of buyers. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Sure. So I was doing a lot of R&D relative to like the fiber up here, learning about what we had available in our region, and I started making yarn and and seeing what kind of products we could make, really. So I was putting the risk out there, just in terms of the financial risk, because there's just, there are minimums in terms of yarns, if you're going to make, especially if you're going to start to interface with manufacturers, there's like, you have to have a certain volume. We call that MOQs, minimum order quantities of garments, if you're having those manufactured. So I was sort of like doing that on my own, taking the risk, making yarn, and hoping I could sell stuff, which I was selling things. But I mentioned that I do design and consulting for other designers. They come to me seeking materials, and designers were coming to me saying, "Oh, I really want to connect with this farm. I want to make yarn." They wanted to like kind of create this completely transparent, traceable, like, hyper local supply chain. And I started telling designers like, okay, this is what it costs to do that. This is how much volume of fiber you need. I can help you do it. And then many of them were just saying like, can I just buy a yarn from you? Because you're already doing it. So I started selling them yarn, which was great because it was helping me with my R&D. I can continue to hone, this yarn that we were making, and work out kinks, no pun intended with that, but and it was
You
helpful.
mean work out the crimp?
The crimp. So anyway, this is exactly what I didn't want to be doing, though. I didn't want to become a distributor of yarn. For me, my big mission with New York Textile Lab is to move designers to the beginning of the clothing and textile value chain, right? Because typically designers don't enter the value chain until we're buying yarn from a distributor or fabric from a supplier, right? Even then, like the next stage of the value chain. And that's like the middle of the value chain, which doesn't make sense because as designers, we're problem solvers, and it gives us agency to move to the beginning of that value chain, and we can make decisions about like what we're investing in terms of like materials, and it really connects us to the entire process and creates this like traceable kind of model, which is what we really need, because we could be creating interventions all along the way of that value chain. So I didn't want to be a distributor. I wanted designers to connect directly to materials and to the farms and the land and the animals, and the people who are really doing the work to create the fiber. So so that's how that purchasing cooperative evolved. Like I started practicing something called vulnerable transparency, where like I really opened up my spreadsheet to the designers. They understood how much of a premium I was putting on top of, I was charging a little more for the yarn. I mean, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. It's quite expensive to work in a bioregional system, as we're aware of that. Many of us are aware of that. But I was showing them like, the whole cost of everything. And we transitioned to this purchasing cooperative, which I'm so grateful. I have amazing partners or members of the cooperative. There are right now 4 of us. We have a menswear brand coming on, which is really exciting. And the way the cooperative is set up, the membership fees are proportional to the amount of yarn you're making. So each member decides, how much yarn they want. And then the membership fees, which are intended to go back into carbon farming. That's the whole idea, to pay for some planning, on the farm, or to even potentially pay for implementation, perhaps. So we're building it. We're building our little pool of money, but the membership fees, part of them to go back into that. So the idea is that the more you make, the more you put back, which is the opposite way our economic system works. Our economic system works through what we call economies of scale or efficiencies of scale. So the more you make, the price point actually comes down. But we're doing the opposite, which the more you make, the more you have to put back in. So this is a complete internalization of the impact that we're having as producers, as designers on the environment. So it's really a different model. I'm very interested in these alternative economic models and thinking about how we can shift, our practices as people who are producing things and putting things out there in the world, and how we can truly internalize the cost that we're having on the land and the people, because we're taxing the environment, we're taxing the system at large. So how can we, internalize that and put it back? And often it's just a little bit more on the dollar, like a few more cents on the dollar, like especially when we distribute it among all the members of the cooperative. So it's a distributed cooperative model, and that's how we're bringing our fiber to market as part of the USDA partnership, because the work is also funded by the partnership. So hopefully this is the intent, that it will take over after the 5 years is complete. We'll have something in place to help put money back into, the carbon farming for our growers.
Yeah, Laura, I had no idea that's how your cooperative worked. I think it's a really cool model to see that, the internalized cost of the effect on the environment included in that cooperative. So that's really exciting for me to hear. I'm wondering, how long has that cooperative been like moving forward, and are you seeing a good response from the partners of that cooperative and from their customers, essentially?
Yeah, great questions. And so I mentioned that we had a transitionary period where I was opening up the spreadsheets and we were talking about the like the real cost of things, like, so everyone really understand, like, why things cost what they cost. And we formally incorporated last year, and we did our yarn production formally together as a cooperative last year for the first time. And so the 2024 yarn production will be also as a cooperative model. Okay, so it took a couple of years, but we've been working together. This is going to be, I think, the 5th year that we're working together. So, we've created trust among each other as well. And, a lot of the work that I do is really about changing how we work together, because especially as designers, but all of us really, because our economic system underpins everything that we do. So, it's embedded in that is sort of this idea of competition, because, it's based on scarcity, our economic model. So there's this, innate sensibility to be competitive, and designers are trained that way as well, to compete, like to be, and there's this first to market sort of mentality, and, so shifting that relationship with each other is a big thing, like, and working like in a supportive way, in a cooperative way, and in a non-competitive way has been something that we've been practicing together, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's amazing. Like, this is the world I want to live in. So for me, it's just great. And I'm working with some amazing brands. They are very dedicated to what we're doing, and it isn't easy to do this because we lack infrastructure in terms of manufacturing. There are not a lot of options for us. There are challenges around, like, getting our manufacturers to really work with the yarns, because the yarns are idiosyncratic. They don't, especially ours, I mean, even in the national program, like, there are some, just like some hurdles around getting the yarns to be smooth enough so that they're running on the machines efficiently. And our yarns are even like less processed. So they, there are some, like, thick and thin issues, like just in the spinning, and you really have to work to have a consistent yarn when you're interfacing with machines, right? Because machines aren't like hands. They're not like someone's hands with a knitting needle. And what happens is the yarns can pop off of the needles of machines, or disrupt, other mechanisms on different machines. So you really need to work with the manufacturers to get them to be patient and work with you. And we've done that. And we're also partnered with some pretty amazing manufacturers. I mean, I'm really lucky. And of course, we have specific people that we're working with because they have low MOQs, right? Right? Minimum order quantities are lower because we're doing small batch production. And really, the work of our network is like, we're not keeping things on the shelf. What we're making is really special. So every year we're working with the agrarian cycle, right? So we're waiting for the shearing. We're putting our requests into the farmers, like around this time, actually, like February, March. We're starting to do that right now, and putting requests in for how much fiber we want. And then we shear, and we go around, we pick up, we do a big like fiber pickup, and we send the fiber off to get scoured and processed. And the fiber, hopefully, if things happen without a hitch, it comes back to us in like early August. And then we produce for the fall and the holiday season. So that's basically our schedule. But the designers are really wonderful, and I love hearing their narratives, their marketing narratives around, what it means to use the materials, and what climate beneficial means to them. And they have like expressed to me how the yarn feels to them. Like, they feel that the yarn that we make in our cooperative really retains the character of the farm. They say it even smells like the farm still, because it's like not as processed. I love that, that they embrace that. And also, like, we're making 3 colors every year. We make an ivory, a brown, and a gray, and the shades vary every year because it depends on the animals that we're getting the fiber from. So these designers have been able to market that, like, as special, small batch. The shades vary every year, and they're kind of embracing it. And it's exciting too, because you see garments that were made in like 2021, and they're like a different, and you can kind of identify it too. Like, I mean, I really feel that the designers in our cooperative are becoming really sensitized to, like, the nuances of the fiber and the yarn, which is exactly what we want to have happen. And we want them to really have this strong connection, to the animals and the land, which is really what this work is really all about.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful because also, like you said, your designers becoming more familiar with the animals and with the land, it makes them more like innovative, right?
Yeah.
Because the fibers changing, the colors are changing a little bit. I think that's beautiful. I am also thinking about, still that like economic model of
Mm.
the environmental costs are still part of the cooperative. And like I come from like an agroecology background, really like soil health focused. And I just think, when we look at a natural system, as we're doing this, like these carbon farming practices and these practices that give back to the land that you're funding with your cooperative, that system just grows stronger, right? So that means your
Mhm.
cooperative is going to grow stronger and those costs are not necessarily going to go up, right? They're more likely to go down as that environmental system gets stronger. And I think that's such a cool model to like mimic the natural cycles and the like you said, the agrarian cycle, like it all ties together so beautifully. I love that. We would love to hear more about your relationship with the mills and how you built that, and if you want to talk about specifically who you're working with and kind of just what the flow of your fiber looks like through the process of your work.
Yeah. So I mentioned that we go around and pick up fiber. We have like this annual big thing that happens every year where I borrow a pickup truck and rent a U-Haul trailer. I go around with my Volkswagen Bug and pick up a lot of fiber. I stuff it in my my small vehicle, but and that's like the fiber that's very close by to where I live, and then I collect that, and that fiber is skirted, and we ask farms to actually do that work of skirting it properly, and removing fiber that isn't of the right quality. I mean, I think we can do some work there with our farms still, like just in terms of quality control and grading, at that level of on the farm, just to help things move a little bit better. Because right now I'm kind of doing a little bit of quality control around that and having to go through bags of fiber. But anyway, we collect the fiber and then we put that into our trailer and we kind of hit the road and go to other parts of the state where we're partnered with farms who have at this time applied to our program, and we have 2 under contract, which we're really excited about. 2 of the farms are fiber farms. So we visit the farms and add to our fiber, and then we take our bundle and drop it off at a farm in Syracuse, New York, which is closer to Canada, because right now we're getting things scoured in Canada. We have issues with scouring in this country. We don't have a lot of scouring facility. I was doing In the past, I was actually using mini mills to scour. So I was really creating like a distributed or decentralized kind of model for that too, like using multiple mills, mini mills to scour. But we got too big. Like our volume, we're up to like 1,000 pounds, and this year we're going to be processing even more. So we got too big for that. So we're now liaisoning with like a scouring plant called Baton. They're up in Canada, Ontario. And so they come down to Syracuse and pick up our fiber. We drop off all the fiber at one of our partnering farms there, and they pick it up and they take it and they scour it. And then that gets sent to Kramer. So Kramer is a spinning mill that we work with in Pennsylvania, and they do the spinning of the machine grade yarn. And then from there, it gets shipped to, some of it gets shipped back to, like so they actually, I give them a packing order, and they divide the yarn up, like a packing slip. And they divide it up into boxes for the different designers, and then that gets sent to our knitting mill in Queens, in New York City. Yeah. So they do the knitting for us, and then I get some yarn sent to me. So basically, you can just say that like the yarn goes to the fiber goes to our spinner, the spinning mill spins it, and then it gets divided up and sent to the knitting where it needs to get knit. I knit in other places too. I was knitting socks in Pennsylvania. Now that manufacturer closed. They're no longer doing our socks. So I found a place in Texas that can knit socks for us in small batch. So that's great. Mostly everything else gets knit in Queens. We do some blankets in New Jersey. But we also work with a mill in New York, a spinning mill. Like I just processed some fiber as skeins for hand knitters, because hand knitters were asking for our fiber, which is really wonderful. So they wanted our 50/50 alpaca wool fiber, our yarn. So they said, but can you make it in a handcrafting form? So we did that. So there's another mill that we work with that's in New York called Bat and Kill Fiber. So those are basically the mills that we work with.
I find it really interesting that you're able to keep a lot of your growing and scouring and processing, and then into the textiles pretty close proximity, which I really value. And I think that's impressive. I'm sure you would have continued to make socks in Pennsylvania if that option was there, but we're at least lucky that there's still someone in the United States to be able to make those. Backing up and talking about our climate beneficial fiber, the partnership that we have with the farms, and then how that works with the carbon farm planning process. We just got funded. We're in almost year 2 of our climate beneficial fiber partnership project, and we have 5 partners on that, and you're one of them. So what's your role in that project? How's that going? Maybe we could learn a little bit about Harmony and the farms that you're working with.
Yeah, Harmony Varner is our carbon farm planner. She's a soil scientist, a graduate from Washington State University, and she lives in Ithaca, New York, which is north of where I live, but she lives in our state. And we're working with alpaca and wool growers. So I mentioned that we had started a pilot program, and I was working previously with a soil scientist who his day job is with the Watershed Agricultural Council, which is an organization that was established decades ago in New York to help keep the watershed clean, to work with farmers. There was recognition that there's this potential that the farms were like polluting the watershed. And so WAC evolved, Watershed Ag Council, as it's funded by the city of New York, and it's a way to help the farmers that are in our region create whole farm plans, that the BMPs, best management practices on their farms, so that they're not polluting the watershed with like manure runoff, or fertilizer runoff and things like that. So Gibson and I met actually through Rebecca Burgess, she was here in New York speaking at one of our alpaca farms. She was giving a talk, and during one of their events, they have an auction that they do every year. And this is one of the larger alpaca farms that we work with. She was there, and she knew that I wanted to bring the carbon farming program here. So she had met Gibson at this event, because Gibson was already working with this farm. The farm is located in his region. So he was already working with this farm to create plans for water quality. And Rebecca and Gibson, Durnford, started discussing the planning. And it realized that it was really easy to segue over to carbon farm plans for carbon sequestration as well, like, because it was really healthy soil that they were, working towards with these plans. So anyway, that's sort of how it started, because it was very easy, like as a pilot program for Gibson, to just sort of segue the planning that he was already doing. So the first couple of farms were already under his purview, his umbrella of WAC. And he was working pro bono. Both of us, were working just like volunteering to do this. We did that for a while, and farms started getting excited and signing up. So we had sign up, but as you can imagine, it was quite slow without any funding. And then Gibson had to kind of he couldn't really. It got to a point where he got too busy. So we had farms interested, and we really needed funding. And then luckily we received this USDA grant, which we're so grateful for. So I'm just telling you that story because we had some farms that were already kind of in line, waiting, to be a part of this. So they've all applied at this point to the program. We've gone through most of their applications at this point. And we don't have contracts on everybody, but we had to go through a scoring process, and we're kind of in the midst of that. But we do have 2 farms that are under contract now with NCAT, which we're so excited about. We have particularly a wool and a cotton grower, those 2, which is great. We've both of those types of fibers under contract, which is great. But we're only going to be really sourcing from the farms that are signing on to the program. That's part of our, our carbon farm network. That's our directive, is to really only work with those who are willing to, be a part of this environmental program. Did I
I
answer
find it really inspiring that this work started, through managing the watershed and knowing that soil is the basis of everything that we do, especially to know that you are doing it pro bono. There's a quote, "Things you are passionate about, they are not random, they are your calling." And that seems to ring true here, in that we all do this because we have a really deep passion and vision for what our system will look like and how natural fibers fit into that. So once our fiber project ends, our partnership, what's your vision for the New York Textile Lab and moving forward, and how is our project supporting that work?
Well, our goal is to recruit more members into our purchasing cooperative. I'd like to double it before the end of this grant process, because of course, it makes it easier, to take on the financial burden of things, right? That way we'll be distributing the financial burden, and with more people, and the price point comes down then on the fiber, which is helpful for us. So there's that. I would like that to see that grow. I would like to see our fiber, the fiber that we're processing, double, which is, it's funny. It's like when I think about it doubling and thinking about schlepping fiber around, which is what we do, I'm like, oh my God, can I handle that? But I think there's, you kind of you just kind of take things as they come. I mean, it's sort of we do what we can, as much as we can, as things present themselves, and move forward with it. So we find ways of managing things. So that's the goal, is to kind of double what we're doing now. I'd
Laura,
also, yeah,
go ahead.
one other thing.
Yeah.
I would also like to see the quality improve, just in terms of on the farm level, getting everybody on board, because this is a collective embodiment that we're generating here, so that everybody is kind of working toward the same goal. So it would be great also to get some support to our farmers in terms of just helping them to move the fiber to market a little more fluidly, smoothly. Allison, sorry. Go
No, that's
ahead.
okay. We also want to know, what is one of your favorite things that you make with the
Oh,
fiber? Yeah.
wow.
It's a hard question, I know.
It's really funny because I have these favorite things that rotate, a new thing, I make something new and I love it and I wear it every day, and then and then then you get sick of it, and then you put it away, and then it rests for a little while, and then you see it again, and you're like, oh, I do love this, and you put it back on. But I think that's like really important with our clothing, though, is to start to shift our relationship to our clothing, like so that we're not like, oh, I'm sick of it, I'm throwing it away. Like, no, you store it. You only have a few things that rotate potentially that are of high value, that you can love and take care of, and and put away for a while and then take back out. But I really love the latest sweater that we made. The beach cardigan is so beautiful, and I've been wearing it, like I'm finding all these different ways of wearing it. It was really meant to be like this sweater that could like a 4-season sweater that you could just like wear all the time. But I was thinking of it more of like it, in the winter, like you'd put it on indoors. But I recognize that you could put like a lightweight vest under it and like wear it like a coat, like 'cause it's so warm. So I love that. And I really love our socks. It was so sad to like have our manufacturer, like to lose that manufacturer. But I think we found a new manufacturer for socks now. So I'm excited. So we're gonna have, and I think they'll be even nicer. They look like we're developing them now. So I'm excited. I think I love warm socks, they're especially like from our fiber. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such an important conversation. Maybe let's talk a little bit about like wardrobe, right? Because that's something everyone can do to support this work is
Mm.
managing their wardrobe and like, buying those higher quality, more expensive pieces. And so I would love to hear you speak on that a little bit because I know for myself, like personally, it's like hard to figure out how to do that, right? Because it's like, am I gonna like this $300 piece of clothing forever? Like making those decisions. So I would love to hear like how you do that or like what that looks like for you and any advice you have for people about that.
Yeah, I love that because remember this whole thing about moving designers to the beginning of the value chain, right? So that there's complete transparency, and they understand like all the steps. And that's really important because who's at the end of that chain is the consumer. And we have to be able to build a narrative around what we're doing, and just communicate like why this sweater is $300, like or like why it costs more than what we're used to. And yeah, I think shifting those practices are super critical, like away from the fast fashion model. And I mean, we're doing this through like we developed labels and tags that talk about our project, and about carbon farming, and with links to helping connect the consumer back to our work. I really believe in a direct to consumer model for these types of products. I think it's really important. Like as a designer, I that's how I operate. And I'm also interested in cutting out intermediaries. Like for me, like it would be great to create a cooperative marketing model. Like with this, right, where you can actually market together and really help help the consumer to see that, like these connections that we're speaking about between this with the soil and the animals, and the farm, the people themselves who are raising the animals, and taking care of the land. So yeah, and I think the problem is the fast fashion model, which is so prevalent, and young people are so they're pulled into it really intensely. The younger generation too, like they're targets for a lot of the marketing around the fast fashion systems. But the synthetic fibers are definitely big offenders. So getting people to understand why they should be investing in natural materials is important, but also shifting this idea of, well, I think we all have to start looking at scale and how we scale things as well, but yes, building narratives is important for the consumer to understand why they're spending more money. And also I think like another thing that can happen is care of clothing. Like, how do you care for a sweater that's like an heirloom, more of like an heirloom sort of sweater that's more expensive, and can you hand wash, can you hand wash it? Like, does it have to be dry cleaned? I mean, I think that's like these noble fibers that come from, they're protein fibers, they come from animals. They can they can be hand washed and taken care of that way, and mended as well, because things happen. We have moths, and they attack clothing, and then so how do you store it? How do you mend it? Like, these are all things that we need to start to take on as consumers too, like and not think of clothing as like something you just throw in the dryer, or or you throw it away. Like, I mean, people still say that, and I have a heart attack when people say, "Oh, I threw it away," because throwing it away means it's in a landfill. It's just, and then putting it in a clothing recycling box is not always the way to go either. As we're learning, we're like polluting the global south, like with our waste. So yeah, we have a long way to go, but I think getting out there and talking to the public about it, raising awareness is key.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of it comes down to education, which is, what we
Yeah.
end up talking about a lot, right? It's like people realize the impact of their buying power, which I think is great work that like you at New York Textile Lab and Fibershed is doing to start that process of people learning about, the polluting power of like microplastics and synthetic fibers. For our listeners, we would like them to know where they can get involved with New York Textile Lab or support you. And I know we'll make sure to include a link to your website, but is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, thank you for including the link. I appreciate that. And in the link to our Carbon Farm Network, the people who go there can also see the work of the members of our cooperative. So supporting the members of our cooperative supports us, like, from in the Climate Beneficial Fiber Partnership, because, that they are the people that are bringing this fiber to market, helping us move it into the hands of consumers. So I'm so grateful for anyone who who purchases from me or them. I can be found at local farmers markets in the Hudson Valley region, which I love selling my products next to our other producers, the farms. I'm happiest in that context, if you want to know the truth. It's just, I've always, ever since my collaboration with the Grow My Sea Green Market in the city, I'm like, these are my people, and I feel comfortable here, and I love being with the people who steward the land, So that's where you can find me with my knit products at the moment. We're mainly focusing on knit products.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Laura. We're gonna have to go look at your partner websites and see what we can get this fall, right? You're gonna have your partners and everyone will have products this fall from
Yeah.
this year. That's super exciting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I hope that we can use this cooperative model that you've created and integrate it into other products and aspects of our life. So this has been really inspiring, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for the work that you do.
The Climate Beneficial Fiber Partnership is funded by USDA's Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities. Be sure to check back for the other episodes of the Soil to Skin Climate Beneficial Fiber podcast series. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at attra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATTRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATTRA Sustainable Agriculture program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.